Hi, we're back again with our chapter book called My Father's Dragon. And I forgot to tell you, it was written by Ruth, Stiles, Gannett. We read all of chapter 1 and part of chapter 2. And now we're going to finish chapter 2 and start chapter 3. And even finish chapter 3 today. So if you remember, this is my father. Do you remember his name? Elmer Elevator. And he's off on a wonderful adventure to meet this dragon. He hasn't met him yet, but that's who he's going to go meet. So let's get off on the adventure today. It's a fun one. And he's going to Wild Island. And you're going to find out how he gets there. Oh, let's see. Let's get to the right page where we left off. I forgot to put in a bookmark. Still trying to find the right page. Okay, here we are on page 18. Everything had to be kept very secret. So when they found or bought anything to take on the trip, they hid it behind a rock in the park. The night before my father sailed, he borrowed his father's knapsack. It's like a backpack. And he and the cat packed everything in there very carefully. He took chewing gum, 24 pink lollipops, a package of rubber bands, black rubber boots, a compass, a toothbrush, and a tube of toothpaste, 6 magnifying glasses, a very sharp jackknife, a comb and a hairbrush, 7 hair ribbons of different colors, and an empty grain bag with a label saying cranberry, some clean clothes, and enough food to last my father while he was on the ship. He couldn't live on mice like the cat did. So he took 25 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and 6 apples, because that's all the apples he could find in the pantry. And, you can make peanut butter if you have peanuts at home and you crack open the shells, and then you can put them in your blender or your food processor. You can make your own peanut butter. You can also make jelly. Could make bread too. Kind of make a fun extra thing about this. So here are the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Here's some extra clothes. A very sharp jackknife. Black boots. My boots are yellow for this adventure. 24 pink lollipops. Chewing gum. Lots of apples. I only drew 1. Rubber bands, toothpaste, and a toothbrush. 7 hair ribbons of different colors. A compass, a comb and a brush. The burlap bag that says cranberry, and 7 magnifying glasses. So let's get on with the story. When everything was packed, my father and the cat went down to the docks to the ship. A night watchman was on duty, so while the cat made loud, queer noises to distract his attention, my father ran over the gangplank onto the ship. So could we make some weird noises? Kind of cat noises. He went down into the hold and hid among the bags of wheat. And there's the cat saying goodbye. The ship sailed early the next morning. Chapter 3. My father finds the island. My father hid in the hold for 6 days and nights. Twice he was nearly caught when the ship stopped to take on more cargo. But at last he heard the sailors say that the next port would be Cranberry, and they would be unloading the wheat there. My father knew that the sailors would send him home if they caught him, so he looked in his knapsack and he took out some rubber bands and the empty grain bag with the label that says, Cranberry. At the last moment, my father got inside the bag, knapsack and all, folded the top of the bag inside, and put a rubber band around the top. He didn't look exactly like the other bags, but it was the best he could do. Soon the sailors came to unload. They lowered a big net into the hold and began moving the bags of wheat. Suddenly one sailor yelled, "Great Scott! This is the queerest bag of wheat I've ever seen. It's all lumpy like, but the label says Cranberry, so it's to go to Cranberry." The other sailors looked at the bag too, and my father, who was in the bag, of course, tried very hard to look like a bag of wheat. Then another sailor felt the bag, and he just happened to get a hold of my father's elbow. "I know what it is," he said. "This is a bag of dried corn on the cob." And he dumped my father into the big net along with the bags of wheat. This all happened in the late afternoon, so late that the merchant in Cranberry who had ordered the wheat didn't count the bags until the next morning. He was a very punctual man and never late for dinner. The sailors told the captain, and the captain wrote down on a piece of paper that they had delivered 160 bags of wheat and 1 bag of dried corn on the cob. They left a piece of paper for the merchant and sailed away that evening. My father heard later that the merchant spent the whole next day counting and recounting the bags and feeling each one to try and find the bag of dried corn on the cob. He never found it because as soon as it was dark, my father climbed out of the bag and he put on the knapsack. Here it is. And he walked along the shore to a nice sandy place and lay down to sleep. My father was very hungry when he woke up that next morning. Just as he was looking to see if he had anything left to eat, something hit him on the head. It was a tangerine. He had been sleeping right under a tree full of big, fat tangerines, and then he remembered that this was the island of Tangerina. Tangerine trees grew wild everywhere. My father picked as many as he had room for in his knapsack, which was 31, and started off to find Wild Island. Well, maybe you could get a tangerine and see how many pieces there are in the tangerine. And maybe you could divide them with one other person, maybe 3 other people, and see how much everybody gets. There's my father sleeping under the tree. He walked and walked and walked along the shore, looking for rocks that join the 2 islands. He walked all day, and once when he met a fisherman and asked about Wild Island, the fisherman began to shake and couldn't talk for a long while. It scared him that much just thinking about it. Finally he said, "Many people have tried to explore Wild Island, but not one has come back alive. We think they were eaten by the wild animals." This didn't bother my father. He kept on walking and slept on the beach again that night. It was beautifully clear the next day, and way down the shore my father could see a long line of rocks leading out to the ocean, and way out at the end he could just see a tiny patch of green. He quickly ate 7 tangerines and started down the beach. It was almost dark when he came to the rocks, but there, way out in the ocean, was the patch of green. He sat down and rested, and remembering what the cat had said, if you can go out to the island at night, that would be good because the wild animals won't see you coming along the rocks, and you can hide when you get there. So my father picked 7 more tangerines, and he put on his black rubber boots. Here are mine if I'm going on this adventure, but mine are yellow. And he waited until dark. It was a very black night, and my father could hardly see the rocks ahead of him. Sometimes they were quite high, and sometimes the wave almost covered him, and they were slippery and hard to walk on. Sometimes the rocks were far apart, and my father had to get running to start and leap from one to the next. After a while, he began to hear some rumbling noises. It grew louder and louder. And here he is with his knapsack on. What do you think's making that rumbling noise? The closer he got to the island, the louder it got. At last, he seemed as if he was right on top of the noise, and he was. He jumped from a rock onto the back of a small whale who was fast asleep and cuddled up between the 2 rocks. The whale was snoring and making more noise than a steam shovel, so it never heard my father say, "Oh, I didn't know that was you." And it never knew my father had jumped on its back by mistake. For 7 hours my father climbed and slipped and leapt from rock to rock, but while it was still dark, he finally reached the very last rock and stepped off onto Wild Island. That's the end of chapter 3 today. We're going to read chapter 4 tomorrow, and I think we better pack everything back in that knapsack and put it on my father as he goes off on his adventure. See you tomorrow.